This is the story about my hobby, which is high elevation mountain climbing. It is also a story about why I no longer partake in this hobby, and quite frankly, nowadays I find it stupid to begin with. Some of you may not agree with me, but this is the internet, and so you'll have to take my story for what it's worth, and do with it what you will. This happened around 5 years ago. This particular incident was fermenting inside my head for some time. The wind howled through the narrow streets of Kathmandu, Nepal, carrying the chill of the distant Himalayas. We stood at the entrance of our guest house, the four of us. Alex, Sarah, Ryan, and me, Emily. Our eyes were filled with excitement and a hint of trepidation. We had dreamt of this moment for years, ever since we met each other in the college mountaineering club. Our goal was a meager climb to Mera Peak, one of the highest trekking peaks in Nepal. To those who are uninitiated, Mera Peak is a classic peak to climb in the Himalayas, standing at 21,246 feet above sea level. That's pretty damn high, unless you haven't figured that out yet. It's not the most difficult peak to climb in the world. But it's not exactly a piece of cake either, like Mount Fuji, for example, where you can just walk your way up to the mountain. You have to deal with glaciers, potential avalanches, extreme altitude, and 5+ kilometer height, and a whole manner of unpleasantness that comes with climbing high mountain peaks like Mera Mountain. There are many reasons to climb Mera Peak. The main one is that the Mera Peak region of Nepal has some of the best Himalayan mountain views. We knew the risks, but the allure of adventure and the promise of breathtaking views were too strong to resist. Are we really doing this? I remember Sarah asked, her breath visible in the cold air as she looked at the looming mountain in the distance. Ryan grinned, his blue eyes sparkling with excitement. Absolutely. We've trained for this. We are ready. I felt a flutter of nerves in my stomach but pushed it aside. This is what we've been working and saving up money for, like the past 2 years, weren't we? I said, trying to convince myself as much as the others. The next morning we set off early, our packs heavy with gear and supplies like tents, sleeping bags, climbing equipment and snacks, mostly Japanese-themed food, and sweets like chocolate and Pringles, and soda drinks. You'd be surprised at how many calories your body has to burn while contending with the physical demands of mountain climbing plus cold plus lack of oxygen that starts at 3 kilometers. And Mount Mera is how much? Was it 6 kilometers? Not that it matters now, really. Anyway, continuing. Navigating the bustling streets of Kathmandu was an adventure in itself, with the smell of incense mingling with the aroma of street food and the cacophony of street vendors selling their wares. Our destination was Lukla, the gateway to the Himalayas. The small plane ride to Lukla was nerve-wracking. The tiny aircraft was buffeted by the winds as it approached the precarious runway. As we disembarked, we were greeted by the majestic sight of snow-capped peaks piercing the sky. We trekked through picturesque villages, each step taking us closer to the towering mountains. The locals greeted us warmly, their faces weathered by the harsh environment, yet always smiling. One evening, as we sat around the fire in a tea house in Kare, an elderly Sherpa named Dorje choked out for us some relevant story or two about the subject. Many have come to climb the Mera peak, Dorje said, his voice low and gravelly. But a mountain is a living being. It tests those who dare to challenge it. Alex leaned forward, intrigued. What do you mean, Dorje? There's some old legend or something? Dorje nodded solemnly. Aye, it is. Yes, there is a legend. Long ago. How long? One of us asked. Around 10 years ago, actually, the old man responded. A powerful spirit named Langtang inhabited these mountains. Langtang was a guardian protecting the land from those who sought to exploit its treasures. But when the greedy invaders came, Langtang was angered and cursed the peak. Anyone who climbed without respect would face his wrath. Or at least that's what they say. Sarah shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. That's just the story, right? I don't know, the old man responded. Supposedly there was this guy who was poor, then he became a monk, then realized that being monk is kind of boring and even poorer life. Then he ditched his monk career and became a mountain Sherpa. But not long ago, like most of us, he realized that it's a rather tiresome work with mediocre payment at best. They say that he died on the mountain while trying to steal some coins from a Germanic-looking rich man who came all the way from Europe. Apparently there was an altercation involving a 9mm handgun. Supposedly there was an argument between the two, something to do about gangsta rap music. The Sherpa ended up dead. The climber survived, but the mountaineer said the Sherpa cursed him and the mountain just before he died, that those who won't pay sufficient amount of coin for climbing the mountain would pay dearly with their lives. Huh? Who the hell carries a 9mm while climbing the mountain? I asked, surprised and laughing at the same time. At the absurdity of this. Why not? The old man asked. I don't know. I mean, aren't there things, I don't know, like laws or something around here? Or is it like Ghetto Street in Compton, where pretty much everyone packs heat? Damn straight. The old man, much to our awe, pulls out a 9mm handgun right in front of us. Look around you. Do you see any police? Do you think anyone cares? Bang bang. He pretended to shoot his gun while holding the pistol gangster style. Hey, what the hell? I shouted. Yeah, get that rusty piece of junk out of my face, man. One of my friends shouted angrily at the old man also. With capitalism running so rampant, you never know what you will encounter around these parts. Pays to be prepared. That's why most of us are packing heat nowadays. It's a toy gun, by the way, the old man said, and then he gave us the pistol to inspect. We saw for ourselves that it was just a cheap plastic toy. The only reason it looked real is because of the darkness of the night in front of the fireplace that we sat around. So everything he said before that was pretty much baloney. I had to come to such a conclusion. Anyway, nobody wants you here, the old man continued. You're only tolerated because you're walking, talking bags of coin who have a death wish. Do what you want, I don't care. But the mountains are dangerous. That part of what I said is true. Just because you pay a mountain of gold for someone to tie the ropes along the way, it doesn't make the climbing safe. If one or more of you will not return, don't say I didn't warn you, the old man said before getting up. Goddamn foreigners. The old man walked away, mumbling some insults under his nose. I don't know about my friends, but I personally didn't know what to make of what this old man had just told me. Most likely others passed it off as a joke, because they were too drunk to care. I was quite inebriated too, but the only word I could use to describe that old man and what he just said and did would be deranged. With our bodies finally acclimated after about a dozen of climbing up and down this particular mountain and our spirits high, we began our ascent of Mera Peak proper. The trail was steep and treacherous, the thin air making every step a struggle. We moved slowly, cautiously, each of us aware of the risks. Remember what Dorje said, Ryan reminded us as we trudged up the icy path. We must respect the mountain. I said half-jokingly. Last thing I need is to meet some trigger-happy local carrying a firearm. Maybe we'll just wrestle the gun out of him and use the gunpowder to make a fireplace. I'm dying from cold out here, Sarah said while climbing next to me. We all laughed. Of course, during our climbing back and forth a bunch of times, we established a bunch of camps up the mountain. One of them was at around 5,000 meters. The view was spectacular, I shan't lie, but it was ruined by the thin air and freezing temperatures. We huddled in our tents, the howling wind outside, a constant reminder of the mountain's power. How are you holding up? Alex asked, his breath visible in the cold air as we sat in our tent, sipping hot tea. I am managing, I replied, forcing a smile. It's tougher than I expected, though. Sarah nodded in agreement. It's brutal, but we are so close. We can do this. Ryan, ever the optimist, added, We've come this far. We are not turning back now. The next day, we pushed higher. The terrain grew more challenging, with steep inclines and icy patches that made every step perilous. Watch your footing, Alex called out. One slip and it's a long way down. We roped ourselves together for safety, moving slowly and deliberately. The air was so thin that every breath felt like a struggle. How much further? Sarah panted, her face red from the effort. Not far, Ryan replied, consulting the map. Another 2 hours, maybe. As we climbed, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I chalked it up to Dorje's story and the eerie silence of the mountains, but it made me uneasy nevertheless. That night we camped at an altitude of 5,800 meters. The stars were impossibly bright, the Milky Way stretching across the sky like a shimmering river. As we sat around the small stove, melting snow for water, Alex brought up Dorje's legend again. Do you think there's any truth to what Dorje said about the spirit of Langtang? I don't know, Sarah said, stirring in her cup of tea, but it feels different up here, like the mountain is alive. Ryan shrugged. It's just a story, and not a particularly good one neither. He even admitted it's all nonsense. We need to stay focused. Tomorrow we've got a tough climb ahead of us. I remained silent, my thoughts drifting back to Dorje's serious eyes. Stories had a way of becoming truths. Was there really something to fear? The morning of our final ascent dawned cold and clear. The summit was within reach, but the last stretch was the most dangerous. The path was narrow, with sheer drops on either side. "Stay close and keep your eyes on the trail," Alex instructed. "No mistakes." We moved slowly, each step deliberate. The ice crunched under our crampons, and the wind whipped around us, biting through our layers of clothing. "Almost there," Ryan encouraged. "Just a little further." I glanced back at Sarah, who was struggling but determined. "You okay?" She nodded, though her face was pale. "Yeah, just need a moment." We paused, letting her catch her breath. The summit was so close, we could almost touch it. It was then that the tragedy struck. Alex, the strongest climber of the group, led the way. We had just reached a particularly steep and icy section when his foot suddenly slipped. In an instant, he lost his grip and plummeted down the slope. "Alex!" Sarah screamed, her voice echoing through the mountains. Ryan and I rushed to the edge, our hearts pounding. Below, Alex lay motionless, a small speck against the vast, icy landscape. "No, no, no, no!" I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "We have to go get him," Ryan said, his voice shaky but determined. We scrambled down as quickly and safely as we could. When we reached Alex, it was clear that he was gone. His eyes were closed, his face peaceful, despite the violence of his fall. I felt a crushing weight of grief and guilt. I still do, actually. We were in shock, our spirits shattered. We made our way down to the nearest village, where Dorje and other villagers helped us to retrieve Alex's body. Dorje looked at us with sad eyes and sighed. "The mountain has claimed another soul," he said quietly. Emily, her face pale and tear-streaked, whispered, "Why did it have to be him?" Dorje placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "The mountain chooses. Sometimes there is no reason. Honestly, even though this is what supports our poor country economically, I have no idea why you people come here to climb these mountains. Around 30% of you end up dead each year. I'd rather you do something else and live." The weight of his words pressed down on us. We had come seeking adventure and had found it, but at a terrible cost. Back in Kathmandu, we sat together in a small cafe, the weight of our loss heavy upon us. Ryan raised his glass. To Alex, he lived for these mountains, and he died doing what he loved. We clink our glasses, a silent promise to never forget our friend. I think we did, but that was it. I was done with climbing at that point. The old man may have been deranged, but he did have a point. There was no honor or glory in climbing these 5+ kilometer peaks. There may be some personal comfort or self-gratification to stand for a few minutes over this particular piece of governmental property, but in the grand scheme of things, nobody cares. Many folks come here each year and climb these mountains and succeed, and you don't see any magazines writing about it. Only time you see some small footnote in the newspaper or some YouTuber covering it is when someone freezes to death at 5-kilometer altitude or dies of hypoxia, or even worse, falls down from the mountain, either with the help of the snow avalanche, faulty rope, or by her own fault. That's when the headlines are made, when someone loses their life on one of these mountains. It is reckless and dangerous. People are literally toying with death and paying mortgage fees just to satisfy the adrenaline rush. That's all there is to it. After my friend died, I understand this now. When Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay climbed the Mount Everest, and some Italians climbed K2, they were the first, and they made history. Maybe a couple of others who climbed immediately after that were noted. After that, it's been done. At least as far as the general public is concerned. I wish I knew this truth a few years ago. Maybe my friend would still be alive. I'm so sad and jaded and depressed. I just want my friend back. TLDR, don't climb these mountains if you wish to live a long life.